The first grade classroom was bright and brimming with life, decorated with colorful posters that blanketed the walls, ABCs, numbers, and cheerful cartoon animals. The air carried the scent of crayons and pencil shavings. The room resonated with the sounds of children working, soft whispers, pencils scratching on paper, and the occasional giggle. Mrs. Alvarez moved slowly between the rows of tiny desks, her shoes barely making a sound on the tiled floor. She was a kind teacher, her gentle eyes and warm smile radiating kindness. The children adored her because she always listened and never raised her voice. At this moment, her students were taking a straightforward spelling test. Words like cat, dog, and sun. Most of them were bent over their papers, carefully writing each letter, but one child was not writing. Lucas, a small 5-year-old boy with messy brown hair, was hunched over his desk, his fingers gripping his pencil too tightly, knuckles pale. Typically, Lucas was energetic, laughing, raising his hand, bouncing in his seat. But today his head was bowed, his shoulders stiff as if he was trying to make himself smaller. His eyes, usually bright and curious, were fixed on his paper. Yet he wasn't writing the words. When it was time to collect the tests, she moved from desk to desk, quietly saying, "Good job," or "Keep trying," as she picked up each paper. Reaching Lucas, she paused. His test was nearly blank. Instead of the spelling words at the bottom of the page in shaky, uneven letters, he had written, "Help me." Beneath those words was a dark smudge, a tear. Mrs. Alvarez's stomach twisted. Her first thought was, is this a joke? Kids sometimes scribbled silly things when they didn't know the answers, but Lucas wasn't the type to play such games. She knelt beside his desk, keeping her voice soft. "Lucas, honey, are you okay?" He didn't look up, his lips pressed together, as if afraid to speak. He gave a tiny nod, but his entire body was stiff, like a scared animal. Before she could say more, the bell rang for recess. The other children leapt up, laughing and pushing their chairs in. Lucas moved quickly, too quickly, shoving his chair in and rushing toward the door, disappearing into the hallway before she could stop him. Mrs. Alvarez stood there holding his test, her heart pounding. Something was wrong. She could feel it. Carefully, she folded the paper and slipped it into her desk drawer. She wouldn't forget about it. She couldn't. If a little boy was asking for help, she had to find out why. The school hallway was lively with kids rushing out to recess, their laughter bouncing off the lockers. Mrs. Alvarez watched them go, but her mind was on Lucas, on those two small, desperate words. Help me. She needed to think. Closing her classroom door, she hurried to the teacher's lounge. The room was quiet, save for the hum of the coffee machine and the faint aroma of microwave lunches. She sat down at the small table and retrieved Lucas's school file. Flipping through the pages, attendance records, old report cards, notes from previous teachers, nothing stood out. No warnings, no concerns, just a normal little boy who used to smile a lot. Used to, because lately, Lucas had changed. Mrs. Alvarez closed her eyes briefly, recalling a flashback. 2 weeks prior, Lucas was lining up for gym class when a janitor accidentally dropped a metal bucket in the hallway. The loud clang startled most kids. They jumped and giggled. But Lucas flinched, his whole body tensing as if he'd been struck. His hands shot up protectively, as if shielding his face. Mrs. Alvarez had touched his shoulder, saying, "It's okay, Lucas, just a noise." He nodded quickly, eyes wide with fear. Then last week, she noticed something else. It was a warm day, yet Lucas wore a bulky hoodie with the sleeves pulled over his hands. When he reached for a book, the cuff slipped back slightly, revealing a bruise, purple and yellow, on his small wrist. "Lucas, what happened there?" she asked gently. He yanked his sleeve down, mumbling, "I fell." "Kids fall all the time," she said. But the way he responded, too fast, too quiet, made her pause. Back in the teacher's lounge, Mrs. Alvarez rubbed her forehead. Across the room, Mr. Thompson, the fourth-grade teacher, poured himself a cup of coffee. "Long day?" he asked. She hesitated. "Have you ever had a student write something worrying?" she wondered. He shrugged. "Kids write weird stuff sometimes. Last week, Jake drew a shark eating our principal." She didn't smile. This was different. It said, "Help me." Mr. Thompson frowned. "Did you ask him about it?" he inquired. He wouldn't talk, just ran off. A silence. Then Mr. Thompson sighed. Probably nothing. Kids exaggerate. Mrs. Alvarez's fingers tapped the table, her mind racing. What if it's not nothing? The words lingered in her thoughts as she considered Lucas's hunched shoulders, the way he jumped at loud noises, that bruise on his wrist. She stood up, reaching for the phone on the wall, her fingers dialing the school counselor's office. When Miss Rivera answered, Mrs. Alvarez took a deep breath. I think we need to talk to Lucas, she said softly. Something's wrong. The counselor's office was warm and quiet, with yellow walls and a large soft rug. A shelf in the corner held toys, blocks, dolls, a basket of stuffed animals. The lighting was dimmer than the classroom, and the air smelled of lavender from a small diffuser. Lucas sat on a tiny blue couch, his feet swinging above the floor, clutching a brown teddy bear, nervously picking at its fur. Mrs. Alvarez sat beside him, while Miss Rivera, the school counselor, sat in a chair across from them. She had a kind face and a calming voice, making kids feel safe. Mrs. Alvarez leaned forward gently. Lucas, remember your spelling test? Lucas didn't look up. He hugged the bear tighter. You wrote something at the bottom of your paper, she continued. Do you remember what it said? Silence. Miss Rivera picked up a coloring book and crayons. You don't have to talk right now if you don't want to, she said softly. We can just color for a bit. Lucas looked at the crayons but didn't take any, shoulders hunched as if trying to disappear. Mrs. Alvarez touched his arm gently. Lucas, did you want to tell me something when you wrote those words? A long, almost inaudible pause, then so quiet it was almost a whisper. I'm not supposed to talk. Mrs. Alvarez and Miss Rivera exchanged glances. Who told you that, sweetheart? She asked softly. Lucas shook his head, lips pressed tight. It's okay to tell us. You won't get in trouble. His fingers twisted in the fur of the bear. Then, in a shaky whisper, Jenny yells a lot. Jenny? Mrs. Alvarez asked. Dad's new wife, Lucas whispered, voice small, as if afraid someone might hear. She gets mad when I talk too much. Miss Rivera nodded slowly. What happens when she gets mad? Lucas swallowed. She puts me in the closet. Mrs. Alvarez's stomach sank. The closet? The one in the hallway? She prompted. It's dark, Lucas whispered. She locks it. She says bad kids go in the dark. His voice cracked on the last word, tears sliding down his cheek, quickly wiped away, like he wasn't allowed to cry. Mrs. Alvarez's throat tightened. Without thinking, she reached out and took Lucas's small hand in hers. His fingers were cold. I don't want to go home, he whispered, voice breaking. She squeezed his hand gently. You're safe here, she assured him. No one's going to hurt you. Miss Rivera's face was serious. Standing up, she motioned for Mrs. Alvarez to follow her to the corner of the room. In a quiet tone, she said, We need to call child services now. Mrs. Alvarez nodded, glancing back at Lucas, still curled up on the couch, clutching his bear as if it was the only thing keeping him safe. Her heart ached, but she understood what had to happen next. On speaker, a woman's voice crackled through. The social worker from Child Protective Services. We're sending someone right now, she said, but it'll take about an hour to arrive. Mrs. Alvarez's stomach twisted. She checked the clock. 2:30 p.m. An hour, she asked, leaning forward. But Lucas's father is supposed to pick him up at 3. The social worker sighed. I know it's tight. Just keep Lucas at school until we arrive. Don't let him leave with his father. Principal Harris rubbed his forehead. And if his dad insists? He asked. Stall, the social worker replied firmly. But don't tell him why. We don't want to tip him off. Mrs. Alvarez stood so quickly her chair squeaked. Lucas is in the nurse's office right now. I told him to wait there. Good, the social worker said. Keep him there. We're on our way. The call ended, and for a moment, silence filled the room. The air felt heavy. Principal Harris cleared his throat. All right, Mrs. Alvarez, you go stay with Lucas. Ms. Rivera and I will handle the father if he shows up early. She nodded and hurried out of the office, her shoes tapping quickly down the hallway toward the nurse's office. Her mind raced. What if Lucas's dad was already here? What if he demanded to take Lucas right now? She pushed open the nurse's door. Lucas sat on the edge of a small cot, nervously swinging his legs. The nurse had given him a juice box and crackers, but he hadn't opened them. His face was pale. "Hey, sweetheart," Mrs. Alvarez said softly, trying to sound calm. "You're doing great. Just stay here with me a little longer, okay?" Lucas's big eyes flicked to the clock. "Daddy's coming soon," he whispered. Mrs. Alvarez sat beside him and squeezed his shoulder. "I know, but we're going to make sure you're safe." Suddenly, Miss Rivera's voice crackled over the phone on the nurse's desk. Lucas's father's truck just pulled into the lot. Lucas whimpered and pressed himself back against the wall. Her heart pounded. She grabbed the walkie-talkie. "The social worker," she started. "Still 10 minutes out," Miss Rivera replied. 15 minutes, Mrs. Alvarez said, anxiety rising. "Lucas's father will be inside in less than a minute." She took a deep breath, trying to think quickly. What could she tell him? Tell him Lucas stayed after for extra help. Say he needs to come inside to sign him out. A pause. "Got it," Miss Rivera said. Mrs. Alvarez turned back to Lucas, whose hands trembled. "It's going to be okay," she whispered. "Just stay right here with me." Somewhere down the hall, a door opened, heavy footsteps echoing on the tile. Lucas's father was here, and the social worker was still miles away. The school's front doors burst open with a loud bang. There he was, his face dark with impatience. But he wasn't alone. Jenny, his new wife, pushed past him into the office, her sharp heels clicking angrily. "Where's Lucas?" she demanded, scanning the empty front desk area. "We're here to pick him up." Mrs. Alvarez stepped forward, keeping her body between them and the hallway leading to the nurse's office. Her hands trembled, but her voice was steady. "He stayed after for some extra help today. We just need you to sign him out." Jenny's eyes narrowed. "This is ridiculous. He's 5. What extra help does he need?" She tried to step around Mrs. Alvarez. "We're taking him home now." Mrs. Alvarez didn't move. "It's just school policy," she explained politely. "We're waiting on some paperwork." Lucas's father crossed his arms. "What kind of paperwork?" he asked. "We've never had to do this before." Just as Mrs. Alvarez opened her mouth, the front doors swung open again. This time, a woman in a blue blazer entered swiftly, accompanied by a police officer. Relief flooded Mrs. Alvarez as she saw the ID badge around the woman's neck. Child Protective Services. Jenny spun around. "What's going on here?" The social worker stepped forward. "Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, I need to speak with you about Lucas." Just then, Miss Rivera appeared from the hallway, holding Lucas's small hand. When Lucas saw his father and Jenny, he let out a frightened whimper, burying his face in Mrs. Alvarez's sweater, clutching her tightly. Jenny's face turned red. "Lucas, get over here right now." The police officer moved forward. "Ma'am, I'll need you to calm down." The next hour blurred by. The social worker took Lucas's parents into the principal's office for a conversation, the officer standing guard outside. Mrs. Alvarez stayed with Lucas, holding him as he trembled, reading him a story to keep him calm. Finally, the social worker returned. She knelt in front of Lucas. "Hey there, Lucas. My name is Sarah. I've got some good news. You're going to stay with a very nice lady tonight. She has a big, fluffy dog named Buddy who loves kids." Lucas peeked up. "A dog?" he asked. Sarah smiled. "A really friendly one. And tomorrow, some other nice people will want to talk to you about what's been happening at home. But tonight, you get to play with Buddy. How does that sound?" Lucas nodded slowly. Mrs. Alvarez helped him gather his backpack, her hands trembling as she zipped it shut. When it was time to go, she knelt and pulled Lucas into a tight hug. "You are so brave," she whispered. "Remember that." Lucas hugged her fiercely, then took Sarah's hand. As they walked out to the social worker's car, Lucas turned and waved one last time. Mrs. Alvarez waved back, watching until the car disappeared down the street. She took a deep, shuddering breath and leaned against the school doors behind her. Principal Harris placed a hand on her shoulder. "You did good today, Mrs. Alvarez." She wiped her eyes and nodded. "Today," she said softly, "we did our job." If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to give it a thumbs up Hit that subscribe button and let us know in the comments where in the world you're watching from. We love hearing from all of you. Thanks for watching.